this will cool you down though, because this is a really cool topic here with Autoflow. So, and MotoVisuals today. I want to start by introducing our guest here, because we could talk all day and have a good time doing it, I think. Folks, thank you for joining us today. I think this is a great topic because it's one of the easiest integrations and one of my favorite partners to work with within the application itself. A lot of you I know are leveraging it, and I think you're going to all benefit from some things here. But I'm very excited for you to see our featured guest, David Lyddall, and also our special guest, Chris Cloutier. I say special guest because that's what you are, very special guest. And I'm so glad you wanted to have this conversation today too. When we started this webinar, it was going to be just me and David talking, and Chris said, nope, David's on there. I want to do it too. And I love it. So let's introduce yourselves here. Go ahead, and David, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm David Lyddall. I started MotoVisuals back in 2008. It was called a different name back then. But I built it as a repair shop owner that was just getting really frustrated trying to talk to my customers and having them not understand why they needed to do service. I got into automotive really because I hated being an investment advisor, and I really enjoyed automotive stuff. And I thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. And I could tell you a story about how that began, but we'll see how time goes, and we'll maybe get
definitely want to hear the story. Awesome. Chris, go ahead.
The only reason I'm here, Craig, is for David. I am a fan of David's. I've been a fan of David's. The first time I saw this product, it was called Virtual Vehicle, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. So me coming from the tech industry, right, and me having customers come into the shop, you know, we had this box underneath the counter, and this thing was nasty, and it had the dirty air filter, and this is the way we did things, right?
Yes.
You know, Craig, you had the broken
we had a box
part,
of transmission parts,
the greasy piece, and what you could see is customers, like, they don't, you know, they're wearing a suit, they just got out of work. Right. And they're wearing this nice suit. And here we are, like, throwing all this greasy crap up on the counter. And I'm like, man, when I saw this, I'm like, here's the better way. So shop owner Craig, you know, my shops, we use this tool religiously in multiple facets. So I love the subject, totally want to be on here, totally respect David and what he's done. So I'm glad to be here and glad to be part of this conversation.
Awesome. Now, we're glad to have you too. So we take a poll every time we do this. I love this. Is one of my favorite parts of the webinar, because we get to talk about these non-scientific statistics that we like to throw out here. And we asked, do you currently use videos to educate clients about their car? And this is a little different than some of our other topics where we were talking about using videos to tell your story. We've had guests recently that discuss that sort of concept, but this is different. This is just education about vehicles, using videos for this. And I'm not too surprised to see this. I think that we've done a good job overall. I'm going to go ahead and pat the back on some of the trainer teams too here, driving people to do this with the application. This is good. Now, whether you're using Autoflow or not, these are the poll results that we have. And I like the answer too, where the ones that aren't using it said no, and I want to start. And this is good news, good indicative element here that we're on the right path. A lot of shops are doing this. If you're not, you're going to benefit from this conversation. Then we asked, are you aware that Autoflow integrates with MotoVisuals? And this one, considering our audience, where we're pulling mostly our Autoflow clients, as well as people that we pull in from other channels, there's a lot of no's on this one too. And so here's where we can do a better job. And that is one of the reasons we wanted to have this webinar and bring David along with it too. Do these stats surprise you guys? Is it pretty normal, especially this one on people currently using this?
It doesn't surprise me. What I'm interested in, that 59% that say yes, they use videos. Where are the videos coming from? Mm-hmm. So are these YouTube videos? Are you using a tool like MotoVisuals or a similar tool? Because there's so much good content out there. There's an awful lot of not so good content as well. But
yeah. I remember wanting to make my own at one point. That was a big idea me and my brother had in the transmission shop, where we'd have some videos of us showing some stuff there. But there's a lot of reasons why that's a huge undertaking when you're already busy in the shop. And since there's such great products like MotoVisuals out there, I think this is going to be worthwhile. And I think that what Chris hinted at earlier too really hints at what we're trying to do with videos and educating clients. Educating clients is something that we talk about all the time. here. We are aware of some things, and I like asking the question, and this is a good question for the audience to consider too. What is the number one fear cited by any client in an auto repair shop? The number one fear, and we talk about this a lot. So the number one fear constantly cited is that they are afraid we're going to sell them something that they don't need. And that's a concern. And I think what we're talking about here with educating clients helps us to really strike at the root of that fear, which is a lack of understanding about the vehicle. If you don't know anything about this thing, of course, there's some fear involved. You have to rely on this person that maybe you just met. How can we tear down some of those pieces? Is this one of the things that drove you into creating these sort of videos, David? Is this?
Absolutely. So the number of times that I was standing in front of a customer trying to convince them that they needed to do a repair, you know, an inner tie rod end or a timing belt or whatever it was. And you know, we use our hands a lot when we're trying to explain things.
Even if we're on the phone.
Had a little V8 Ford engine on the counter. You know, you could turn the crankshaft and the belts would turn. And I'd be talking about pistons and valves, and just thought, you know what, they don't even understand what that word means, and it doesn't make any sense to them, and people would resist all the time. Would resist doing a repair because they just didn't feel comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about this as we were talking, as we were preparing for the webinar.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, when I'm buying something, how do I decide whether I'm going to make a purchase? And a lot of the time I look at something, you know, I'll look on Amazon and I'll think, oh, if I don't like it, I can send it back. It's not a big deal. But they can't do that with an automotive service or repair, you know. Well, we're going to replace your shocks. You know what? I didn't really like the new shocks you put on. You know, take them back and give me a refund.
Yeah. No, that's
Craig, and I'm going to go back to the box. So not just the fear. So when we do have this box, because I know to these statistics, that is I think a testament. That's great, Craig, that we've been able to drive a lot of adoption in this, because it's that important, right? We should have 100% adoption, because it's kind of, you know, you say no brainer. It's a cliche word, but even when you have the box and the part, which a lot of shops still use, to David's point and to your point, how does that work? They don't, you know, just because you're holding up this broken thing, they don't know how that goes in the whole system of things, right?
Yeah.
You know, even some people in the shops don't even understand how this, you know, your service writer might not exactly know what this broken piece does or did. And he's trying to convince a customer, as y'all said, that, hey, this thing is bad. But, you know, going through these videos and showing exactly how this piece is part of the cog of the whole system, it takes it to that next level of education that we all want to give our customers.
Absolutely. I like what you're saying earlier too, with that box of parts, because this was absolutely a staple of the visit. Like, because one of the rules, and I think it's true for your shops too, do you have to give the customer back their old parts if they want them? Is that a law?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I don't know if it's a law, Craig. In Texas, I don't know if it's
good
law.
Best practice anyways.
It is a best practice. Absolutely.
Yeah,
To keep
no, that's good. In Michigan, it's law. Like, if they want their old parts back, you get all your old parts back. So we're tearing down transmissions. We've got literally every seal, Teflon seal, every little bearing and thrust washer, you name it. It's all in this box, and it's got the transmission fluid residue. And you want these?
Yeah.
But sometimes they wanted to see this. Almost all of our clients were super intrigued, because they're paying thousands of dollars for this repair. And what they aren't connecting with on the invoice is the value that they're getting in that repair. And David, I watched one of your training videos on this too, and I thought you did a really good job articulating that, specifically when you're selling maintenance, something that isn't even broken yet.
Yeah.
But selling maintenance.
And it's things like brake fluid replacement. You know, when your car comes in and I replace your brake fluid, it's going to go out and drive almost exactly the same as when you came in. The only difference that you would notice is if you had a whole bunch of moisture in there and you were driving a lot of long downhills. But for the vast majority of people, brake fluid replacement doesn't doesn't make any difference.
No.
And they've just spent $100 and whatever on this service and don't see any value in it. You know,
No, for sure.
I love doing jobs like the headlight refinishing.
Yes.
Because the customer comes and they look at it and they're like, "Oh, my car looks fabulous."
Yes.
Yes.
And there's no question about the value there. But when you're doing a service that doesn't have a visual value attached to it, you've got to find a way of explaining the value to the customer.
Yeah.
And
No, that's well said.
And visual explanations are how people understand things.
Absolutely.
Visual explanations. Absolutely. And this is where we jump in. And like, for those of you who haven't seen what MotoVisuals looks like, this is a visual representation. So I don't have audio playing here, but these are narrated. You can see the captions on the screen. David, you said it best in one of your training videos. These are short and to the point. And
yep.
It is so critical that that be the case with our attention span. Chris and I talk about attention span all the time. Chris brought in the Microsoft study a while ago. We use it a lot in our talks. The human attention span now, 7 seconds. It's less than that of a goldfish.
Shorter than a goldfish.
Yes. Yes. And look, video consumption is a big thing. Did you guys see like China is like cracking down even harder on their screen time regulations, like at a big level, like reducing the amount of screen time that youth can have in a rather oppressive way, like they can do. And it makes me wonder though, it's like, wow, I see my kids' attention span too. They're looking at videos. They're always doing videos, educating themselves with videos. This is where they're at right now. I think these things connect with where people are at right now, especially our younger generation. So hopefully no screen time restrictions in our country. They'll be able to look at these MotoVisual videos anytime and they absorb it so much better than my words coming out of my mouth. Absolutely.
I'm going to go to some of the videos in there, and y'all were talking about maintenance, right? One of our favorite ones, and I know you're going to pull some up, but one of the favorite ones we like to show at the counter is the oil change one, because man, why, it is one of those critical pieces for a vehicle, right? There's just a couple pieces of maintenance that you just need to do, and you need to do on a regular basis, and you still have people fighting. And the problem is those regular oil changes, when they don't happen, and you have to explain to the customer that they have ruined the vehicle and the cost of repair after that, it's hard. Those are hard conversations to have. So if you can have these preventative maintenance conversations, and you really can show them that, hey, you're there for their benefit. You really do care about their car. You really do care about them getting their kid to soccer practice and them getting to work, right? But this is kind of, and we always talk about this, Craig. This is a business where we create relationships, right? And one of our favorite books is The Go-Giver, right? And The Go-Giver teaches this principle about, hey, you give without wanting to receive. And this is one of these ways that you can just give information to your customers. You don't have to. You certainly don't have to take the extra minute or two to show them this, but you're giving them this information, equipping them with this so that you know that, hey, this is a partnership. It's just not us asking for your money. This is a partnership. We're giving you information on why that oil change is important. They see that video once and they go, I never knew that. That's how sludge, I hear the videos of I need the sludge buildup and I need to buy this for the sludge, but I've never seen the sludge buildup because they never will. Right. Yeah, it's just like David said, you're not going to ever be able to crack into an engine and show them that.
No, but I can't crack into a transmission and show them. We had a cutaway unit in front by our office that did have rotating parts, but it's still very not great at showing how that stuff works. And David, I feel like you cracked the code with these transparent vehicles, the way you pull out these engines, the way it shows this bearing overheating because of an axle boot. How many advisors out there are selling axle boots because they know what can happen? The customer doesn't.
Yep. And Chris, you said something there about the ability to. I'm trying to remember the word that you used, but we would see that so often, and everybody does when you're talking to a customer and the customer just doesn't understand the reason that they need to do something. Bringing it out in a way that makes it very easy for them to understand. It transforms that experience.
It's a relationship. And I don't know if it's a relationship. I mean, me and Craig and everyone, there's a relationship type business, right? We have to create the relationship between you and the customer. And how do you do that? How do you differentiate yourself? And you know what, David, I believe sometimes it's the small things. We think and the cup of coffee does matter. the cup of coffee, the clean waiting room, all those things add up to the experience. And me and one of my older brothers always talked about this, like, what's your +1? And your +1 might be +10, but this is just one more +1. So what are you looking for when you're looking for +1s? Is this an easy +1 that you can add, that you can contribute, that the customer goes, wow, I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I never understood the reason why. I remember talking to a customer about a catalytic converter.
Yeah, sure.
You know, we needed to, and of course, we've all heard it called a Cadillac converter.
Sure, absolutely.
But explaining to them
common.
what this part of the vehicle does, and yeah, the reaction was, I've never understood that before. Well, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, go ahead and do the job. And that's what we love to hear. Go ahead and do the job. Yeah,
absolutely. Right now, all they think about catalytic converters, David, is they're super expensive, and everybody's stealing them right now.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, right?
It's true. But it was about all sorts of things on vehicles, and the response from the customer. You know, when you've explained something to them in a way that they feel comfortable with, your level of trust has just gone through the roof, because I care about you enough to take the few minutes that it takes to educate you about why we're doing this service. Yes. We would have customers, new customers that would come in saying things like, you know, my friend told me that they saw this video and what a good job you did explaining it. And that trust that you're building with one person becomes, you know, multiplied as it's passed on with other people.
Multiplication of trust. I like that. This is good. Peter Foreman brought in a point in chat too. Like, they have 10 out of 10 knowledge in the shop, and our people in the shop often are at that level. And I think that where Peter's hinting at too, like, they need to turn it down a notch frequently to connect with the customers. And I think that's very important, because otherwise that 10 out of 10 knowledge is super intimidating from a client standpoint. And I use this story a lot in my DVI training, where, hey, customers they pretend to understand what you're talking about. Why would they do that? And you have to think back to that number one fear they have, that if we're going to rip them off, if that's still the perception in their mind, if they betray a lack of understanding, that makes them appear more vulnerable in our eyes. And this just completely disarms that fear by striking out completely the mystery of the components that we're talking about. They don't need to be an expert now to grasp something that we're trying to explain. I love it.
Yeah.
So now we get into the topic of strategy and implementation. And I think this is where we really want to focus this conversation in particular, because we get to show a lot more about how awesome MotoVisuals can be in this process too. But there's specifically automation that we're going to talk about with the integration, but I think there's some advisor-driven benefits that you've talked about before, David, and I'd love to have you elaborate on now.
Sure. So when we're devising or creating MotoVisuals content, we always make two versions of a video. And one version is the narrated version that's perfect for attaching to a DVI, emailing or texting to a customer that's not present in the workshop. But when I first started creating the videos, it was so that I could use them as a service advisor talking to customers. And so you're hitting the toggle switch there at the top of the MotoVisuals page. We have the narrated videos. And if you click on steering system and just expand that, you'll see that under that list, there are 10 videos, right? Now, change that toggle to interactive and click on steering system again. And there are 3. And when we're making narrated videos, we try to make them very specific to a problem that a customer might be facing. We don't need to tell them about every single thing that can go wrong with a steering rack and pinion system in a narrated video. We need to tell them about the problem that they've got on their car. Yeah. But when you're standing in front of a customer explaining face-to-face, you don't want to be jumping through lots of different videos. And so we have steering rack or rack and pinion steering system. You can click steering rack and pinion there at the end, and we'll do a cutaway view of the rack and pinion. You can click and show how a leak in the center seal allows fluid pressure that fluid pressure that's normally trying to help you turn the steering one way or the other is leaking through the center seal, and so you're losing out in steering assistance. And then if you hit reset, we could jump back and go to the tie rod ends, and so click tie rod ends there, the third
You can
third
control the
button.
steering. I'm just having fun with this now, David. This is pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
So
brilliant.
yeah, you click tie rod ends. You can explain, the tie rod end is a ball inside a socket with a lining between the ball and the socket. And when that starts to wear out,
Oh, that's so fun.
you end up with play between the ball and the socket. And the customer can see that and say, oh, all right, I totally understand why I need to replace that part.
This is brilliant. I've never used it this way. I've always been so engaged with DVI attachments and everything else like that. So, and using the narration because I'm no longer engaged in that process. But this is actually equipping an advisor who is engaged in a conversation at, like Chris is talking about, the relational level here. We get to build on this.
Yeah.
With such a great resource. I've used little wooden stuff on my counter. I've had all the gimmicky things on the counter. It doesn't do half as good a job. This is great.
And
Very good.
the real power, sorry, Chris,
No, go ahead,
the real power of this is that the service advisor is the expert. You don't want to turn around and play a YouTube video or a narrated video saying, here's somebody else explaining it. I understand how this works, and I want you to know that I understand how this works, but I want to make it so that it's really easy for you to understand. Let me just show you a quick video.
Yeah.
Go back to the homepage and click on engine, and then timing chain.
We want to stay interactive or narrative?
Yeah, stay interactive.
Timing chain.
Last one on the right.
Timing belt. Oh, last one on the right. Oh, chain.
Yeah.
Yes, not belt. Gotcha. Yeah. Let's.
And so this video, obviously we've seen cam crank sync codes, and so you're trying to explain, and for a non-automotive person, understanding cam crank sync out of range is incredibly difficult. And so you can explain here, you've got the camshafts at the top and the crankshaft at the bottom, and that chain keeps them linked together. And if you click on the stretched timing chain stretching, fourth button across there.
Thank you. Oh, neat. Yeah.
Just explaining how the link, because they're saying it's a metal chain. How did it stretch? Well, the hole got a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And now the chain is longer than it should be. And then I jumped to worn timing chain. And you can talk about the symptom that they may notice, that when they start the car up in the morning, they hear the chain rattling. And as that chain becomes damaged, you click on broken timing chain. It's possible in an extreme case that chain can break and the piston's going to come up and bend the valve.
Oh no.
And and it's a great story. But almost anybody can look at that and say, well, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I don't want to bend valve. That looks bad.
Just to reiterate, at the counter, especially in Rowlett, right, we have a big TV. It's a smaller showroom, and I can't tell you how many times that we've put this on the big screen. I was in Ratchet Wrench a while back. One of the things I had was like in my showroom, I had created my own digital display. I use a little smart our Fire Stick, and it kind of scrolls through the different tabs, and one of them is MotoVisuals. But what we had the ability to do was go ahead and project this onto the screen, and you're not only educating the one person in the room, you're educating everybody sitting in the room, right? And to David's point, look, the service advisor has more authority now, right? Like we look even more like we know what we're doing at the counter now because of this, right? And what did the service advisor really do? Click some buttons and said, here, watch this. See that? Yeah. Look at this, right? I mean, there's
can you equipping average advisor to be awesome.
It's like the DVI and putting pictures on it, putting videos on it. People are like, well, I don't need a DVI to sell. You don't. You could have a great salesperson. They don't. But anything to accent or create a better experience and help, once again, remove some of that doubt, remove some of that, and create that transparency in the transaction, creates a better +1 for your shop, right?
Oh,
And
man.
like David said, once again, at the counter, wouldn't you want your service advisors having this credibility and showing these things? And like you said, Craig, it's wow, that's easy. Look at how smart I am. You didn't create the video. All you did was played it.
It's really, really, really simple. All right. So I'm going to do another +1 because here's what I will want to do now. It's just popped in my head. I want to have a projector on a nice wall. And we can do this in the lobby and have an advisor weathermanning this conversation inside of the lobby with all your clients. I think that'd be so much fun. I want to
Craig,
see this happen.
one day it will probably actually be that,
in
right? I know-
augmented reality.
in
Watch out,
augmented
Ben.
reality. You laugh, but this is coming faster than we think, right?
Yep.
And we're going to get hit on this point, right, a little bit later, but it does educate your people inside the shop as well as your customer,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, your service advisor is getting education. Even your techs are getting a little education if they're looking at the video, right? I mean, let's be
Absolutely.
honest.
Oh, yes.
So, Chris, you and I were at the Shop Hackers conference last week,
Yes.
and one of the people with me on the advanced booth was telling me about how a technician in a shop was using MotoVisuals, and it was a fabulous story. It was a young guy from Ukraine who had come to the US, didn't speak any English, and his mom was trying to help him get a job. And so they built like a picture book showing all of the things, all of the repairs that he'd done in the past. And they took it to this shop, took it around a bunch of shops, but they took it to a shop, and the owner said, we'll hire you. Yeah, we can see what you can do. We know you don't speak English. Fair enough, but we'll bring you in. And because he didn't speak English, when customers would try to talk to him, rather than saying, I don't understand you, he'd pull out a card that would say, "I'm deaf and mute," because he didn't want to seem like he couldn't speak the language. The guy that I was talking to, Jack from Advance, was he went into the shop one day and was talking to this, talking around the technician, and walked over to MotoVisuals and pointed out that he can watch the videos in other languages. And so, you're clicking on the the language selection down there.
Yeah.
And he switched it to Ukrainian, and he played him a video, and the guy's like, "Oh, I understand this." And so he started watching the videos in Ukrainian and in English.
I'm thankful for the graphics now.
So that he could understand the wow, that's a long long explanation. So that he could understand the different, or the automotive term in English, and basically taught himself English using MotoVisuals.
That's
or automotive. So he was
awesome.
Probably knows a lot more car part names than some other words now, but yes.
Those and the curse words, right, that he learned in the shop, but he knows how to talk to the customer, right, which is good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
David, I learned a little about you before this webinar too, where you're from Northern Ireland and UK area, which is interesting because when I flipped into UK English, because I had to see, do these narrate differently, and they did. And so
you want to look even more educated, use UK English. Yes. Like, wow, these guys have some pretty fancy people working with them, right?
Yeah. It was actually really, really impressive. German too, Ukraine, and even in Hebrew. This was great. I loved that language element is there, but this is something that shops are running into. We've had shops in French speaking Quebec that ask for Autoflow elements to be able to be in French. And so here's a partial solution, at least until we do likewise. This is a fantastic tool to help explain things if you have that language barrier. Wonderful piece that and until we talked on this, David, I had no idea that this would do this. I thought this would be just basic website changing words type stuff, but it goes so much deeper than that. Well done. Well done.
And I'm appreciating Peter spelling tires correctly in
there it is.
in the chat window.
Yeah, we got to add use sometimes in our when we're talking to our friends in Canada as well. Our colors. I don't know.
Yep.
Do you say it? I don't know. But here's the other side of this too, is like navigating the website with a customer in the shop. That's one option that I would love to see people master, but we can also go even further, and we can email and we can text links that go directly to the customer. So I did this one from one of Chris's shops here. And if you have a specific video, it's not hard to go and grab that video outside of one of any of these topics. There's a simple method of sharing. You can copy and attach and put that stuff there. And if you're using Autoflow, we can make sure that that goes directly into an Autoflow message if you want to. So it's real simple. Put it on your clipboard, paste it and send. And I did exactly that when I popped into one of my demo instances here. So we'll segue a little into some of the benefits that Autoflow can do whenever we have these messages go out to the customer. This is fantastic. They open that link and it's going to be exactly that one I was just showing you. Brings them straight there with your shop's information attached to that video. Nice touch.
Yep. And if you go back to the homepage on MotoVisuals just for a second, you don't actually need to go all the way to the video to get that link.
Oh yes, teach me.
So if you click on anything,
we'll go steering system again. I like steering rack stuff.
You see in the top left,
you've
got an envelope, and the top right, you've got
and the
copy a link
there too. Oh, this is gold. Yeah.
So
see, this is great. So this is advisor driven stuff. This is stuff that, hey, this is something that can complement that +1 for the advisor toolkit here. I love it. Now,
but you've raised a really good point, and that is advisors are busy. And
they're busy.
I mean, it is one of the busiest jobs I've ever had. And when you're tied up in so many different things, you don't always have time to educate the customer. And a lot of advisors, even those that have access to the MotoVisuals website, just don't get around to spending the time that it takes. And that's why integrations into the workflow process just makes so much sense. And that's why we love working with Autoflow.
This is where we really began the relationship too. So I came hard into this automation first, trying to take stuff off of the service advisor's shoulders. And then I see the impact of it too. And then I'm thinking, wow, okay, so not only can we automate, but we also can accentuate what we're already doing. But let's talk automation here. And this is, I think, Chris is early on with DVI. You had the awareness that, hey, getting these things into that DVI is going to be gold. And we've had the ability to do so for quite some time. A lot of people that have used our DVI are aware of the fact that we have this MotoVisuals button on any line item that we want to do. We can hit that MotoVisuals button. It'll search for a video and you can attach it right there on the spot. You can even watch it, preview it, and watch these things right from here. It's actually really great to be able to expand these out. I'm going to kill my sound, but it's wonderful. Just the interface and everything else. Hitting attach. Is this automated? I mean, it's still accentuated. I see this as an advisor activity, and what we ran into when this was the only way that people could do it. A lot of times advisors are still flying so fast, so busy. They weren't taking the time to do this. So we went further. We went now and made it possible for us to go into DVI setup, DVI sheet setup. And when you're working with an inspection sheet, we can pre-attach MotoVisuals videos to there. So your administrator can set it up. And what happens is when you decide, all right, let's take power steering fluid, and we'll find a video for this one here. If we want to do a specific power steering fluid replacement video, anytime a technician marks this item red or yellow on the DVI, that video is auto attached. So to show you how that looks, if I go back into the DVI here, and we'll use an example that I have all set ready to go here. I'll just say transmission fluid, red. Boom, we have a MotoVisuals video just like that, just based off the technician indicating that there's something that can be addressed on that transmission fluid. You can still add your notes and everything else like normal, add a recommendation, and let the video educate the customer. It doesn't get any easier than that.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's so smooth. Now, this is one of those pieces that it's so simple to set up. I'll show you again here, though, when you're an administrator, and I know several of you in the audience today are, you go into your sheet setup page, pick any inspection sheet that you want to do. You've already joined this webinar, so I'm going to close our wall message here. And then we can open up our categories. You see all the line items. You can see the ones that I have attached MotoVisuals video to. and you can see the ones that I have. And if you want to de-attach something, you certainly can. And I believe I'm not wrong on this. You can actually attach more than one. So if there's multiple videos you want to do, you can go ahead and do that. Pretty awesome.
Peter just asked in the chat, do you know if the client has watched or opened the video when it's sent?
I sense a feature request coming out of this question.
So on the MotoVisuals side, it's actually, so that's what our development team are working on right now. It's getting ready for release. And so when you're using the MotoVisuals website, you'll get a pop-up notification when a customer has received the link and when they've watched the video, and you'll be able to see that on the homepage. And we'll make that available through API to integration partners like Autoflow, so that you can provide that feedback as well to your customers.
Oh, that's going to be so good. That is going to be a huge asset. So once that's there, I'm excited. I'm already ready. When can we have this?
Yeah.
It's easy, right, David? You just tell your developers and poof, it magically appears. That's what Craig thinks.
Yeah, developer right here with me today. I didn't even have to make the feature request, so it's going to be a lot sooner.
It's going to be sooner, yes. Sorry, Craig. I just need to poke a little bit of fun at you.
Oh no, that's why we're here.
Because development is easy. It's all easy. No, that's great. You know, and tracking it all, it is a great question, Peter. Right, and finding the value in what you do and how you do it. And you know, Craig's got a lot of different sales reports on the value of as we've collected data over time. Right, we can really tell you what is best practice for your shop and when it comes to using our tool, and what are the different pieces and parts that you should include. Like, we've got a lot of really good data, and I think that, you know, to Craig's credit and his team have done a really good job of helping our clients dial this in. So this is just one more excellent piece that
it's an easy piece to help get people integrated with, for sure. So let's show you how it looks from a client standpoint, though, through the Autoflow DVI. So let me grab an image. So I have got a real picture from the vehicle that I'm working on. I have some actual notes. This won't be my best DVI demo in the world. We're going to go ahead and mark this as complete. Oh, I've got to put in my mileage. It's my real van, folks. Still going strong, almost 250,000 miles. You think it's just used for demos. It is not. Actually, it's on its way to Lansing right now. My son is taking his drone pilot test from the FAA. Should be exciting. Should be really exciting. So let's take a look. I'm going to send it first just so I have it sent. And then I'm going to open this up in an incognito window here. And you can see what we will see for a client that has those MotoVisuals. So it's a simple button that they'll have to click. And I like showing this. Actually, it's more fun to see this in cell phone size, because that's how a lot of people are going to be doing this. And David, I think that's another element of this that I appreciate, is that, hey, these are going to open in any screen, any device. They're going to be able to meet the customer wherever they are. Fantastic to do in the lobby. I might be using a fake API here, though, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually watch the video on my my integration here. Demo site fun. Sorry. But yes, this is it's really simple for those customers to do. And I've had an ad block issue too. I'm using too many plugins to allow you to see that there. But yeah, very simple for the customer to click and start watching those videos right from their side and see how that all goes into play. Now that's in the DVI. I did mention briefly sending in text message. So my strategy for you Autoflow fanatics out there, I'll say that you definitely want to make a predefined message. Go ahead and just start typing something to you. Like, I have a predefined message where it's, I got to type it right though if I want to use predefined. Here's a video to help visualize the system we'll be discussing, right? And then you paste that link that David taught us how to grab straight from here. If you just want to copy that, I think it's this one, just copy the link, right? Boom.
Yeah.
I should have that. Is that the only click? Oh no, I see. There's one more click. We've got it right here. So if I hit copy on there, boom, we've got our link. Put the link right in here, send, and Joe Palooka gets his video on whatever system you're dialoguing on. I think it's important to show that, because obviously we have some great stuff going with the DVI. But what happens if we just don't have a DVI process going for this particular vehicle, or maybe there's a separate problem that got found later on the visit, and you just need to send them a one-off video, and you don't necessarily need to just have them go and reopen that DVI to do this. Very effective.
And as our partnership has definitely become more and more and more of a really solid partnership, Craig, we do have plans to absolutely look up those videos via the, conversation and use it in
Beautiful.
a couple of different pieces. Our DVI was always our focus, but we've seen the power that we can really help and make it very easy for
Excellent.
shops to share this information.
Excellent. No, that'll be fun stuff. I'm excited to see that. Going on here, let's go back full screen here. Let's talk about some of the other benefits. We've interlaced a lot of this in our conversation today, but David, obviously you're behind Advance. They want to sell parts. We know that there's a sales impact on this. What's it look like on your side?
So that it's a great question. And I'll tell you a couple of little stories. Obviously we
Is that
don't
what you
know.
call all your stories?
little stories. Yeah,
It
you're
is.
good. So obviously we don't know, we don't see the sales that a client has. The only thing that we know is how many parts that they buy from us. And so I did a little bit of research a couple of months ago and took a group of Autoflow users that we know have MotoVisuals integration. And we looked at there were a couple of hundred of them, and we looked up the sales that they'd had within Advanced Auto Parts over the previous 12 months. And the top 50 out of this group had bought about $77,000 in parts, and the bottom 50 had bought about $43,000 in parts. Now, when I say the top 50 MotoVisuals users, those that had used the most MotoVisuals animations and those that had used the least MotoVisuals animations. And so
Wow.
Just from the point of view that we have, if you use the animations, you buy more parts.
That's just parts from Advance that this answer on, of course.
Right.
So that's not even factoring in anything else.
You're definitely
wow.
selling more. And we did another an experiment with a group that were looking at MotoVisuals and saying, we're thinking of implementing this in our shops, but we don't know if we want to commit to it until we actually see that it works. And so we set them up with an account for each of their stores, and they did a trial with 43 stores, and they said for one day, it was a Tuesday, we're going to use MotoVisuals in all of our stores, and we want to see what the sales result is. Now, an annual subscription to MotoVisuals is $590 a year. Okay, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
In one day on those 43 stores, their sales jumped $30,000 above any previous Tuesday that they'd had. It was a significant increase. And
I'd say so.
If you take $30,000 divided by 43, that's about $700 increase per store for a $590 annual subscription. So we believe in it, and we have customers all the time say, I used it twice and covered the cost of an annual subscription just in the additional sale that I got that I don't think I would have got otherwise.
Wow.
It works, and it works when you use it. It really does.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Staff education, obviously, it's a powerful tool. I've been reviewing the videos lately, just going through the catalog because we're kind of updating some things. It's a never-ending process. And I came across a really old video, and normally we would say, let's pull that video from the site and put a new version. But this one is a spark plug, a secondary ignition scope pattern. So it explains all of the parts of the firing line, or the trace line on the scope when you're looking at a secondary ignition system. And
very technical.
It's very technical. And in the description, I changed the description and said, this is not for customer use. This is really not designed for that. But it's a great tool for a technician, especially a new technician looking at a scope for the first time, looking at that pattern and being able to understand, this is the effect of a small spark plug gap on the
Yeah. I know a few clients though that still want that level of data. I had some pretty smart clients that came and asked some pretty technical questions, and the amount of time that it would take for me to try to go and explain it to them still would be, it's a challenge. But if I have a guy that is that interested, I personally would like having that option still in the archives. So
yeah. Well, and in fact, that's another thing that we're working on, because as we make new animations, we have this constant battle between giving enough information and keeping it concise and easily understood.
Yeah.
And so what we've started doing, and we haven't released any of these on the site yet, but we've started creating 2 versions of each animation. So you've got a basic description that's
Saw a few that were like that, basic and advanced.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
That's aimed at the person that just wants to have a rough overview, and then a much more technical description that might be a 2.5 or 3 minute video, but it's going to give a lot more detail.
Right. And so, yeah, just to show, we do work here, but the inside of the DVI, if I go back to my homepage here in Autoflow, one of the benefits that I have, you can close that. We have the ability very easily, even though it pre-attaches stuff on there. So advisors, if they had multiple videos attached to a line item, this is where I can see, like, you might want to have both pre-attached and you just get rid of the one that you don't need for a particular client. Maybe you just decide you don't need to. It's so easy to remove on the spot. So you don't want to overwhelm them with too many videos to watch.
Yeah.
And keep them focused on whatever one's going to be the most benefit to them. I like that a lot. That's cool.
I want to add a point to the staff education. So I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute. So the first time I own auto repair, most of y'all know that I didn't come from auto repair. I came from software. So I was going to go get my C1, my ASE C1, and I took it with another one of my advisors. So at the time I was working on Saturdays and a couple days during the week, and he was working there pretty much full time because I had still had my other job. I went and took my C1. I failed it. So everybody thinks, Chris, you're super smart. Oh my God, I failed it bad. Right. And so the other guy passed it, and his name's Colin. He's a great advisor still with us. And he's like, it takes him 20 minutes to take the test. He's sitting out in the lobby and he's like super excited. And he sees me walk out and he's like, Chris, did you pass? Did you pass? And I'm like, and I failed. He's like, what? You failed and I passed? Like, that doesn't happen. And, he quoted, and he was, and then finally he's like, Chris, I'm sorry. And he wasn't, not at all. Right.
No.
So what I did was I went back and I immersed myself in these videos, and I used these videos to actually educate myself to pass the C1. So that's my story for staff education. It does. And then as we're getting to this point of not only not having enough technicians, look, having a good service advisor that actually understands building a ticket, understands what it means to, put the whole picture together. This can also kind of fill that gap to, once again, and that's what we have to do now, especially in this world. We have to fill these gaps. So, from staff education point, it's worth not just the $600, David. I mean, it's worth so much more, because we talk about this as an industry that, we're willing to pay for training. Well, here you go. Here's a perfect training tool that you can then introduce to your staff and just write it off as training. If you don't ever want to show it to a customer, don't do it. But the $600 is worth the just training your staff internally, in my opinion, if you just look at it from that perspective.
And if you don't need to train them, you can also humble a few of them, because as we talked earlier,
absolutely.
All right, so transmission specialist, I'm not kidding. I had no idea that this was called a Jubo flex disc. I called this the rubber insulation thing on the drive shaft.
Nice.
I didn't know. and that's what these videos often do to even some of us that have plenty of experience.
Just one quick note. On the education front, we do provide MotoVisuals at no cost to educational users. So schools and colleges.
Awesome.
Good to know.
Awesome. We actually have some clients we do too.
Yep.
So a lot of times we will provide, and we, knowing that's awesome. We can partner.
So for anyone watching the webinar, if you've got links to a school or a college, please let them know. Just go to education.motovisuals.com and apply for an account there. We'll set them up. And
that is beautiful.
Awesome.
And I'm going to remind our education shops as well that that's an option for them, because I know for a fact some of those instructors will just be wanting to put these videos in front of their students. Here, watch this entire catalog. Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome that you guys do that. This is great, guys, and I appreciate hearing some of these figures. We always know that, like, viscerally, that it has a sales impact. So like Peter's question too, I think it'll be great to know, like, once we know like how many people view and can start drawing a correlation to a what's the right amount of MotoVisuals videos to attach to a DVI. Like, are we hitting them with too many? Are we hitting with too few? What's that happy medium? I think we can start to answer some of those things with a lot of feedback. And we should be able to get a lot of feedback, because across our clientele, we track this. We're now seeing, since we added that API ability to pre-attach those videos, over 300,000 MotoVisuals videos every single month. So it doesn't take long. It's going to be, I don't even know what the final number is going to look like, because it keeps increasing every single month too. But we're looking at millions of educational videos getting out there throughout this year, and that's really exciting to me. I think that is, we always talk about changing the industry. We always talk about the things that we can do to change the industry, and hey, then there's things that you can do, and we're actually doing them. And I love to see our clients engage this piece.
And it's hard, Craig, you know, as Autoflow as a company, we don't endorse, we don't partner with a lot of we try and stay neutral, and, you know, we become the Switzerland, and, you know, and it drives people crazy because a lot of times what happens is, and Craig knows this, and David, I'm sure you felt this, we endorse somebody or we say something, then Chris gets a late phone call and says, they did this to me and they did that, you know, and I'm defending a company that I have no direction on. I have no influence on whatsoever, but this is one we can definitely get behind, right? Because it just, on so many different levels, it works. And I have yet to this day to come across a video where, you know, where we've had a complaint, because I don't think there's going to be. I don't, you know, maybe there's some bugs there, David, or whatever, but the information so far as I know, is just solid. It's very well vetted. It's very well put together. Yeah,
I
it's
think
just
it's
good
at staying out of the weeds on some of the touchy areas.
Yes.
And if there's a video about, like, for me, like, I'll give you an example. I don't do transmission flushes with machines. We never really did. And so I would just simply wouldn't share that video because my recommendation is different than some shops on that regard. It's just different. And
Sure.
that's okay. And then I think there's an important question to this too. Whether you, there's a lot of TechNet shops out there that we're serving already. And if you're a TechNet shop, you have MotoVisuals. And if you have MotoVisuals and you haven't connected to Autoflow, hit us up. It's a free integration if you're already subscribed to MotoVisuals. It is just a couple of seconds for us to plug the API key in. And we had this question in chat earlier. The best way to do this, send a quick email to support@autoflow.com, put a subject in there, MotoVisuals, please, and how to help. They'll let them know what shop you're in, and they will be in touch with you, and we will help you get those API keys plugged in a couple minutes. You'll be rolling. So it's just that easy. No difficult setup.
Sure. But you don't have to be a TechNet shop to be a MotoVisuals user.
Correct. That's the other question. So exactly, David. And I'm glad you mentioned that again too. And we should mention it again, that you don't need to be a TechNet shop. You can be anybody. I'll say our friends at Christian Brothers are doing a wonderful job leveraging MotoVisuals as well. And we have lots of other brands out there that are also leveraging it. This is something that folks, it can be anybody. It can be you. There's no issue. But if you're a longtime user of both systems, please don't waste any time in reaching out to us. We want you to be able to leverage this. It doesn't change your subscription at all on this level. And
from our point of view, if you're a TechNet shop and you're not an Autoflow user, you've got MotoVisuals already, and the power that it gives to your shop when you integrate it into a workflow tool. Is
we showed
incredible.
You all those things on that website. You don't need to be an Autoflow user in order to experience everything that MotoVisuals has to offer. And I didn't show much of this, but you can email from your interface on your website, right, David? And I did see a text function in there too. I did not play with that, but technically you can send a text message from your platform as well. Is that true?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
But it works. Honestly, if you have MotoVisuals and you don't have Autoflow, you should seriously be looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, this has been a great chat, guys. So I'd like to make sure we get a few closing remarks. And folks, this is how you reach us as well. Email is usually the best way. We have everybody's email on this screen here. And feel free to go ahead and let us know any closing remarks here. I think we have one more question coming in as well. There's a question on a multi-stores.
Yeah, and Nate, just send me an email about that one.
Yeah.
We can work with you.
Nice.
And then there was a question from Scott about summarizing the video in 10 minutes. Do we have the AI summary thing working yet, Craig, or is it still manual that we have to summarize our videos here? Or, Scott, you could just take and fast forward through the parts that I guess don't.
We will be doing
matter.
We always do the recording for these, and then we put them
Yes.
up and we email everyone, and we do bookmark certain segments.
Perfect.
So that'll definitely be easy to find the spot.
Scott, you can mark quick through all the Chris comments is typically what, and I think Craig
We have never
specifically
bookmarked
says
a video
Chris,
that way. We should do that. Chris talking too.
I thought I've been good this webinar, Craig.
Oh, you
I've
were
been good.
No. And David, you were absolutely excellent too. Is there anything that you want to, do you have time for a little story?
Well, I'll tell you how I first started fixing cars.
Do it. Yes.
Man. So I was living in Scotland. I owned a Citroen, and
Of course.
not a lemon, but a French car. The only French car I've ever owned, and it's probably going to stay that way. And I had this mechanic that worked on my cars, little shop called Citroen Servicing, and it was down this crazy little cobble lane, and it was wide enough for two cars, but there was always a row of cars parked on one side, and he was like the last shop down this lane. To get out, you had to back up with a dog leg on it, and it was I became pretty good at reversing, but I would go in and see Kenny and say, my car needs such and such. And I went in one day and Kenny said, I don't know why you're paying me to fix this. He said, you could do this yourself. And I said, well, Kenny, I don't have a lift. I don't have tools. And he said, bring your car down at 4:00. I'll be done on this project. We'll put your car on the lift. I'll show you how to do it. And that was really my start in fixing cars. I'm becoming really interested in automotive service and repair. Great guy, really love Kenny. Maybe not the best business sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, service advisor training. Yeah,
but
we haven't discussed bringing the customer into the shop, showing them how to do it themselves to help save the money yet. But a great way to bring an apprentice into a shop, maybe.
Definitely.
Nice.
Chris has done something similar to that. One of our developers today started out, he was going to do his own repair, came into Chris's shop, and
Well, that's fabulous.
Absolutely.
And you're right. I think it is, if you've got a young person with an interest in doing it, I think that's a great way to maybe introduce them.
yeah,
But
that's great.
yeah, very grateful for Kenny and for helping lead me down this path.
And we are too. No, this has been wonderful. Thanks, David. I really appreciate you sharing this stuff. We need more little stories.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's my favorite thing in this webinar now.
Craig, my closing comment will be to use this product, right? Once again, we don't endorse many, if any at all. And this is just one that is, once again, I use the term no brainer. There does take some brains to use it. You got to know how to look things up. You got to know, in the vicinity to get there, but yeah, but it will certainly build brains. And I want to tell my quick story of how I got banned from the shop. It was like throwing, how you get banned from washing clothes, you throw one red piece of clothes into the whites and then the wife says no more. So I accidentally drained transmission fluid. It was a Toyota, and I thought, and the shop was super busy at Rowlett. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to help, because I do have a background in working on cars, but I didn't pull myself far enough up. So what I thought was the oil drain plug was the transmission drain plug. Pulled it, saw the red coming out, immediately put it back in, went and talked to my brother, who was my partner at the time. And he said, what did you do? He goes, why would you come out? We don't need you out here. He goes, go back inside and don't ever come out here again. And I was like, okay, is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? So that's the complete opposite story of David, of how I got out of auto repair in the short time that we had the shop.
Yes. At least you didn't pull out a band anchor. I've seen that before, so that's good.
But once again, to endorse the product, great product, MotoVisuals, definitely sign up for it for sure.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you both being guests today. We'll make sure this recording gets released for everyone. I hope you'll reach out to our guests, and we'll see you soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks,
care,
Chris.
bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.